call 917-889-3675. That's 917-889-3675 to be a part of the action on the phone line. Not able to listen live? Not a problem. You can always catch Annie, the Radio Chick, and Southern Sense Talk Radio podcast in archives at southern-sense.com. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Southern Sense the right way.
Oh man, welcome. Thank God it's Friday, because I'm telling you, every time Friday happens, something weird is always going to be in the news. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the Radio Chick Annie, and you're here listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, High Plains Media, SHR Media, Kinetic Hi-Fi, The Fix FM out of Charleston, South Carolina, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker. Oh, just forget about it. Just go to our website. It's the name of the show. Put a dash in the middle. So southern-sense.com. As I said, I'm your hostess, the Radio Chick Annie, along with my co-host, the debonair, the intellectual, and the oh-so-prolific author Curtis C.S. Bennett, author of the website, theoriginalradicals.com. Welcome aboard.
Hey, how you doing, Annie? Are you ready to get this election cycle over with?
Yeah, I seem to be having something with my headset because everything sounds kind of faint to me. So I don't know if it's me, I'm going nuts, or what. But I'll deal with it. Anyway, we've got a great show lined up here, Curtis. We've got two fantastic guests. We've got a motivational speaker, negotiator, and author Ed Brodow is going to be joining us. He's got a new book out. It's actually being released next month, In Lies We Trust: How Politicians and the Media Are Deceiving the American Public. Oh, shock on wheels. Oh, my goodness. Politicians and media lie to us? Oh, no, that's not possible. But we're going to have him on the first half. And the second half, we're going to have the founder of Under the Shield, an organization that helps law enforcement officers through times of trouble, stress, trauma, as well as military personnel. Under the Shield is founded by Susan Lewis Simmons, and she'll be joining us. Also, Curtis, we have a guest co-host who's already in the chat room. He'll be joining us on the line also. Tim Tapp. He's the host of Tap Into Truth, so he'll be calling in shortly and joining us. So we've got ourselves a smash-up show, and I think we'll have a lot of fun today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, as always, and may we get a lot of people to listen in on this great show today.
Yeah, and hopefully that if they do listen in, and if they are someone that is in need of the services of Under the Shield, they'll reach out, because I was trying to put up the confidential helpline that they have, but for some reason Blog Talk Radio is misbehaving, so I can't quite get it into the system, and I'll do that later on. As soon as we're off air, I'll update that. That said, those that listen to our show know that we start off with a dedication each and every time to a fallen hero. And today's show is also dedicated to a fallen hero. Today we dedicate it to Police Officer Timothy James Brackeen of Shelby Police Department in North Carolina. His end of watch was just recently, Monday, September 12th of this year. And as I pull up the dedication music, this is from the Officer Down memorial page. Police Officer Tim Brackeen succumbed to gunshot wounds sustained 2 days earlier while attempting to arrest a man near the intersection of DeKalb Street and Gidney Street. The suspect was wanted for armed robbery and kidnapping. He was searching the area when other officers who were on the scene heard several gunshots. They located Officer Brackeen moments later, suffering from gunshot wounds. He was taken to Cleveland Regional Medical Center and then transferred to Carolinas Medical Center, where he remained until succumbing to his wounds. The 23-year-old suspect was captured 4 days later by a SWAT team in Coventry, Rhode Island, where he was transported to a local hospital where he was treated for a gunshot wound to the left torso fired by Officer Brackeen. He is now in the Rhode Island Correctional Institution and is fighting extradition. Officer Brackeen had served with the Shelby Police Department for 12 years and was assigned to the K-9 unit. He is survived by his wife and daughter. This is from WCCB out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And it reads, "We go to work every day, not knowing if we're going to come home, or not, so an hour trip to 4-hour trip is worth coming down," said Captain John Gray of Raleigh Police Department. Wives of fellow police officers watching Brackeen's wife, Mikkel, searing and sharing in her pain. "You can't help but picture yourself sitting there," said Brooke Pearson of Shelby. Canine units from dozens of departments lined the ball fields at Keeter Stadium. Perhaps the most touching moment, Brackeen's longtime partner, Psycho, sitting by the casket. The service honored him as an officer. "Timothy James Brackeen took a bullet for the city of Shelby," said Reverend Glenn Davenport. His brother, Reverend Stephen Brackeen, honored him as a man. "As he watched him fight the battle of his life, I thought, that is who I want to be," said Brackeen. But there's more to the story. This is from Shelby Star. A daughter and wife, family, brothers and sisters in blue, and a community said goodbye to Shelby Police Officer Tim Brackeen. Supporters and law enforcement officers from across the state and country made their way to Keeter Stadium in Shelby to honor Brackeen's life and offer their prayers and support to his family. The crowd began to trickle in at 1 p.m. and quickly grew to more than 5,500 as of 3 p.m. Men, women, and children, awashed in blue and black, took their seats quietly, stopping every so often to shake the hands of law enforcement officers and emergency personnel as they passed. Safety enforcement from as far away as Chicago, New York City, and Sayreville, Tennessee, along with those close in Lincoln, Gaston, and Mecklenburg counties, took the day to say farewell to their brother in arms. "To attend a service like this, it reminds us why we took our oath," said Chicago Police Department Detective Terry Shields. At 2:45 p.m., the audience stood as Shelby Police Department officers took their seats front and center on the field, and the Brackeen family soon followed. Shelby Police Chief Jeff Ledford led Mikkel Brackeen, his widow, and their 4-year-old daughter Daphne to their seats just behind home plate in the baseball stadium where the funeral was held. The young girl clung to her mother and family members near her. A horse-drawn carriage brought Brackeen's casket, adorned with an American flag, to the field. Shelby Police Honor Guard placed the casket in front of the stage where memories of Brackeen were shared. His brother Stephen stood before the crowd and led them with a prayer. Brackeen's pastor at Faith Baptist Church read his obituary. "Tom was a devoted and loving husband, father, son, and brother," said Dr. J. Barry Goodman. His fellow canine officers and their partners from more than a dozen departments lined the edge of the infield. His first love was his family, but a close second was his work with the Shelby Police Canine Unit, said his friend and mentor and canine trainer Howard Young. Tim's favorite thing was to get into the bite suit for training, he joked. "It takes a special kind of person that wants to be bit by a police dog." He shared fun stories from the more than 10 years he knew Brackeen, and as the crowd laughed, Young shared his ultimate goal. "He told me one day, 'I want your job when you retire.'" He worked tirelessly to achieve that goal, becoming a mentor to new handlers and being part of training and demonstrations wherever he had the chance. The family on the field laughed at the jokes and the memories of their beloved son, husband, father, and friend. The crowd joined together, reading the 23rd Psalms, the last Bible passage that was read to Brackeen before he died. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. He revives my soul and guides me along the right pathways for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadows of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they will comfort me. You spread a table before me in the presence of those who trouble me. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup is runneth over. Surely your goodness and your mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Today's show is dedicated to Officer Brackeen. It is also dedicated to all the men and women who every day don their uniforms to protect and serve as our first responders. And is also dedicated to the brave men and women of our military, to those that have served since the Revolutionary War, to today and into the future. We dedicate this song, Last Call, by Dave Bray. God bless them all.
Sorry I let you down today, but please know I gave my all. think I saved a few good lives, but I couldn't save my own. This is my last call.
Dave Bray, Last Call, and you can check it out by going to davebrayusa.com. And you're here listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, High Plains Media, SHR Media, Kinetic Hi-Fi, the Fix FM out of Charleston, South Carolina, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, oh, the heck with it. I'm not even going to go through all the rest of them. Just go to our website, which is the name of the show. Put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. And check it out. Still sitting at number 16 of the top 100 conservative shows at toptalkradio.com. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the radio chick, Annie. And we're ready to rock and roll. I've got my co-host here, Curtis C.S. Bennett, founder and author of the webpage, theoriginalradicals.com. Check out his website. And we've got Tim Tapp into the Truth, joining us as a guest co-host. So good afternoon, Tim. Tim, unmute. Unmute yourself, Tim. All right, as soon as Tim figures out how to unmute himself, you're with us?
I am with you.
All right, great. We've got a fantastic guest. He is he knows the art of negotiation probably better than Donald Trump. He is author of a new book that is coming out and being released, I believe, next month on November 10th. It's called In Lies We Trust: How Politicians and the Media Are Deceiving the American Public. Let's welcome aboard Ed Brodow. Good afternoon, Ed.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing great. You know, I often can tell what type of a guest I'm going to have after I read the book. Because, you know what, people read books, they go, all right, this is dry, you know, whatever. But they don't hear the author's voice. And when I was reading your book, I said, this guy's got to be a pisser. He has to be an absolute pisser reading your book. Because your voice just comes through it. And I'm saying, oh, my goodness. And just the title alone should say, you've got to have one wicked sense of humor.
Well, I appreciate that. It's nice to know that somebody gets you.
And just imagine that the media and politicians lie to us. Really? Is that really possible that they actually do that?
Oh, you're making me laugh now.
Well, that's the point.
There was a time when I would have argued about that and said, "Oh no, you know, if you pick up the New York Times, you're going to get all the news that's fit to print." But I have discovered that is not the case anymore, that when you pick up the New York Times and you look at page 1, what you're getting is opinion mixed in with the news. So you don't know what you're reading. You don't know if it's fact or fiction. That's a very dangerous situation.
Now, that is completely true, because I find it, even my local rag, which actually has now gotten some more conservative reporters on it, which surprised the heck out of me. But you hear the opinion coming across in these pieces, and the public just reads it as if they're reading a news article and not realizing that 95% of what is in that newspaper is opinion. And you can't even turn on a news station anymore without getting opinion mixed, I would say 75% opinion to only 25% news.
That's right.
And
Absolutely right.
there once was a time where you had someone like a Walter Winchell that, you know, you can throw a little writing into it and bring you the facts. Walter Cronkite was always giving you simple facts until he finally made his opinion known about the Vietnam War, and then he stopped being the reporter that we all respected. Now, he was the ivory tower of reporters until that incident during the Vietnam War, and then even he fell from grace.
Well, you know, there are some people that are not political reporters; they're political commentators, like Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity is not trying to make any, you know, he's not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. He says, "I'm a conservative, and this is where I'm at." But he's a commentator. But when you have somebody like what's his name, Don Lemon, on CNN, who's supposed to be reporting the news, but he's not, that's objectionable.
Yeah, that is the truth. You know, because you listen to Hannity, you listen to O'Reilly, and I'm sorry, I want to throw rocks at the TV when I see Megyn Kelly lately. But you expect opinion from them. You don't expect them to report facts. And then they throw in someone to be an alleged reporter like Shepard Smith, and even there you don't get true reporting. You get opinions, speculations, but no facts. So where are we supposed to get news and get the facts from?
The answer is my book.
Nice lead-in, wasn't it?
That's why I wrote. Well, I'm serious. That's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book so people would find out the truth about the major issues of the day, because we're being lied to about so many things. We have an election coming up, a very important election, and I wanted people to have a place where they could go to find out, what is the truth about terrorism? What is the truth about healthcare? What is the truth about climate change? What is the truth about the racial situation? And since the politicians and the media are all lying to us, I'm providing the truth in my book, which, by the way, the book is already out. It came out on the 27th, on Tuesday, so it's available for sale now.
Ah, okay, because I do have the Kindle copy of it. Matter of fact, Jonathan was supposed to send me the copy in the mail, and I guess whoever he contacted at Amazon sent me someone else's book instead of yours. I think he's trying to unravel that.
I should get some residuals from that person.
But it's funny because Thomas Edison, you quote him in your book, that said 5% of the people think, 10% of the people think they think, and the other 85% would rather die than think. And this was written at the turn of the 20th century, and this is still true now as we go into the 22nd century, 21st century. Where are we? I forget what century we're in. But
I'm not sure where we are, actually.
But unless you have it, and I keep on saying this, unless you can reduce it to 140 characters, no one's going to pay attention to it. That is the mind span of people today.
Well, it's called the dumbing down of the electorate.
And they'd rather listen to what someone's opinion is, and then they make the decision based upon someone else's opinion. And then they don't want to think and look at all sides. I've had this conversation over and over again. Why would you not vote this coming election? Why would you vote for Hillary? Why would you not vote for a presidential candidate at all? Or why would you vote for Trump? Give me your reasonings. Tell me why you're going to do that. And I'll tell you why I think that you should be thinking it in a different angle. No one wants to look at all sides of the argument. They look at the easy way through it, and then they walk away and say, all right, fine, I thought about that, and this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, well, we have political correctness, which makes it even worse. Because what I've discovered is that when people find that they disagree with my political point of view, instead of dealing with the substance of my arguments, they immediately will call me a name. I've been called a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, an Islamophobe, a sexist, this, or that, a corn on the cob-ophobe. I mean, I've been called everything. So this is kind of, this is what people do now. It's a cheap shot. It's an easy way out, and people don't seem to have the courage of their convictions anymore. They don't have convictions.
No, it's whatever the American Idol tells you to think about. Whatever Dancing with the Stars tells you is what the new norm is.
I'm showing people in my book. Yeah, I'm showing people in my book how to be a critical thinker, because that's the only way we can get around this, is by encouraging our voters to be critical thinkers. And the last chapter of my book, I go through a whole course for people. I have a 10-step course in how to think critically, how to take an article from a newspaper, break it down, and figure out what's really being said in that article, so that you have to be more discriminating about what you accept. Personally, I don't accept anything. I'm skeptical about everything that I hear, and that's what people have to be able to do that.
All right, go ahead, Curtis. I hear you have a question.
Ed, I understand what the founding fathers' original intent was for the press, but can you give me your views on what is the job of the press, or should be?
That's a very good question. What's the job of the press? It used to be not even when I was a kid. The job of the press was to present facts and present the news. And, as Annie said, you had Walter Cronkite, you had Huntley Brinkley and Eric Severide and people like that, and you can trust those people. But something has happened in the last 25 years where I think these journalists are being taught that their agenda is more important than the news, so that their job is not to present the news, but their job is to further their own personal agenda. And that is my take on what's going on right now, that these journalists are being trained to do this. They're being trained to brainwash us, and they think that they're some kind of a higher calling.
Yeah, it sounds like they're out to set the agenda.
I'm sorry?
It sounds like to me that they're out to... can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. To me, it seems like they're out to set the agenda and to not report the news, but to influence it.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, and that's a big change that's occurred in my lifetime.
Yeah, and you're also finding that certain... Oh, go ahead, Ed.
Go ahead, Ed.
No, I was going to say, the press is supposed to protect our rights and our freedoms, and they're supposed to. That's the purpose of the press. But they're not doing that anymore. So that's a breakdown in our whole system, and it's got to be corrected. I don't know how. Except to say that if people would not accept these lies, they wouldn't get away with it. That's my answer. So it's up to us. It's up to you and me.
Would you agree that they feel that they are the fourth branch of government?
They are the fourth branch of well, it certainly seems that way, doesn't it? Certainly, what do they call CNN? They call CNN the Clinton News Network, don't they?
Yes. Well, it's weird because the media chooses what news articles to go forward with. And you find that, they basically all go lockstep. So the real news, the things that we really should be aware of, such as the takeover of the internet as of tomorrow by an international agency that is headed by Russia as if they're a friend of ours, would not prevent us from having free speech. This is what the media is not talking about. What is going to happen tomorrow? Our places like
I don't know. It's scary.
It is scary. Will shows like mine be shut down because all of a sudden they feel that I may have offended someone because I object to abortion, or I have a conservative view, or I will talk about radical Islam? Will I be shut down?
Yeah, you've just raised a very important issue, and it's my greatest fear. I believe that there is a campaign going on right now to shut down free speech in this country. And you just given one example of that. Another example is the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, has said that she's going to prosecute anybody who's guilty of what she calls anti-Muslim rhetoric. So, like what you just said, if you criticize Islam, you go to jail. They have laws that they're trying to pass in state legislatures. There's one before the legislature in California, where I live, that would make it illegal to deny global warming. So if you say that global warming is a hoax, which I do in my book, I could go to jail. This is unbelievable. In the United States, it scares me. It really scares me.
Well, it really does. But I do believe Loretta Lynch has already said that she will prosecute anyone who criticizes global climate change. I think she worded it. She has now also made transgenders in the LGBT community a privileged class. So if you end up having your wife or daughter go into a restroom and they are attacked, physically assaulted by someone from that community, they cannot prosecute them because now they're protected class. The ridiculousness that has come through this administration over the last 7.5 years is so mind-boggling that I don't think the public is aware of 1/10 of the damage that they have done.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And by the way, this whole business of special classes is another one of my pet peeves. And I would like to be a special class. Ed Brodo, the special class of Ed Brodo. I'm going to lobby to become a special class so that I can get in on this, because this is really an amazing thing that's going on with everybody being a special class.
Well, actually, the University of Michigan, university students want them to use a preferred pronoun. So the student turns around and says to the college, you will address me as a Z, or I am a she, even though you are a he by birth, and vice versa. So there is one student in the University of Michigan that said, all right, if I have a preference for a pronoun and I want to be addressed by the staff at the University of Michigan, I choose that you address me as His Majesty. True story. The student is a conservative student.
I think that's terrific.
His name is
that student.
Grant Stobel, and he's the chairman of Young Americans for Freedom. He's on the board of governors and decided to troll the university administration by officially requesting his pronoun to be changed to His Majesty, and it worked. So, just to show the ridiculousness.
That's fantastic. I love it. I just love it. I talk about that in my book. I talk about that in chapter 10 of my book, what's going on campuses right now. And there are a few colleges or universities where the administration is saying, hey, enough of this. We're not going to put up with that crap on our campus. Unfortunately, there aren't enough of them, but I'm hoping there will be more. And we have reason to be optimistic that in the next year or so that more of these colleges will start to get wise and stop this nonsense.
Yeah, you've got the safe zone so that you can go there so no one may say anything that you may find offensive. Really? And what happens once you get off that college campus and you're now in the real world, working on a construction site or working in a factory or working in an office, and someone may have said something to you that you may find offensive? What are you going to do? Run to the boss and go, they insulted me?
That's exactly right, yeah. Yeah, go crying. Go cry to the boss. The boss has to say. It's absurd. It's totally absurd. And I talk about that also in my book. And I say, what is that? What are these people going to do? And I actually have a quote from a newspaper that says that these people will change the way that the society works, so that they won't be put down, and they'll be able to pull this nonsense when they get out into the real world. Lots of luck.
Well, conservative talk show host Michael Savage Tuesday was yanked off the air in the middle of his broadcast because he was questioning Hillary Clinton's health. This is how bad restriction of our free speech has become when a talk show host known for his conservative views, known to attack the Clintons, suddenly gets shut down mid-broadcast. Oh, man, I wish I was a fly on that wall.
Yeah, we are in deep trouble. We are being lied to. There are attempts being made to control us. Big Brother is taking over. Remember 1984, George Orwell?
Very well. It's on my shelf. It's on my shelf next to Animal House. I mean, Animal Farm.
Yeah, well, Big Brother is out there and having a hell of a time right now. We got to stop it. In Europe, they already have laws in the Western European countries that you're not allowed to say anything about Islam. In fact, Brigitte Bardot has been convicted 5 times in France of making anti-Islamic statements. She had to pay fines, and the whole thing is ridiculous. But if they get away with that, that's the end of free speech. And we need to look at Europe and see what's going on there and prevent that from happening in this country.
All right, well, we've got another guest co-host with us, Tim Tapp. So, Tim, jump into the conversation. Please don't sit there suddenly.
I know.
Yeah, we actually had a chance to talk just this past Wednesday night, and I appreciated all your time there. There is a question, though, that I would like to ask I didn't get to Wednesday night on this topic, and that primarily, we keep talking about how negative things are. Who do you think is actually doing the best job of presenting facts where we're not just being manipulated?
Well, you asked me a similar question the other night, and I kind of try to dance around it, but I won't do that right now. I'll tell you exactly how I feel. I think that Hillary Clinton is one of the biggest liars that we have ever seen. I think that she and her husband are political criminals. I don't believe anything that she says. And Donald Trump, on the other hand, we might not like his outspokenness, but that's his biggest asset, is that what he tells it the way he sees it. And when he says something, that's how he feels. And frankly, that's the kind of person I want to deal with. I want to deal with somebody who's a straight shooter. I'm a straight shooter, and I expect other people to be that way. But when I see someone like Hillary, and I give a number of examples in Lies We Trust of how Hillary has told just incredible lies and gotten away with it, I'm sick and tired of that, and I don't want any part of that.
Well, I certainly understand that, but I actually was kind of meaning more towards the media. Is there any sources of information that's in the mainstream that is actually doing a good job of presenting facts?
No, not really. Well, I tell you, the show that I like to watch is the O'Reilly Factor, because I don't always agree with O'Reilly. Sometimes he's a bit obnoxious, but I respect his intelligence. And the one thing he does that I really like is if somebody gets on his show, he always has people with different points of view on his show, which I admire. But if somebody gets on his show and begins to spew out their own political agenda, he will stop them. And he will say, this is the no spin zone. Don't pull that stuff on my show. And that, to me, is a breath of fresh air, and I love it.
Well, I feel the same way about O'Reilly. Sometimes I just want to reach for the TV and grab his throat and go, what the hell are you thinking, man? But otherwise, he has the ability to bring out the truth, even though he is a commentator and not a reporter. And I love it, especially Jesse, when he sends Jesse out there into the field. It's like, really? These are the people that are going to be voting for the next president? Run for the hills, guys, and make sure you've got enough food and ammunition and everything, because this is really going to get nasty. But it is good.
About Jesse.
Go ahead.
I mentioned Jesse in my book. I was watching Jesse. He said to some person to identify on a map where the Atlantic Ocean is, and they were unable to do it. They didn't know where the Atlantic Ocean is. Maybe they moved it. I don't know.
Well, this is another problem. We've got our school districts that we think they're supposed to be teaching our kids. We've actually abrogated our own responsibility. The teaching should have been held by the family. It should be family controlled. It should be the community controls it, not some school board that sits out there and says, oh, well, this is the national standard. We're going to slap it on the kids and they're going to graduate. We don't care if they go to college. Just get them through. Just pump them through the system, pump them out the other way and say, oh, what a good job we're doing. See how many kids we've graduated. The school systems are failing drastically, and again, this is another area where the wool is being pulled over our eyes, and we accept it.
Yeah, but it's really one symptom of many. The whole government is being run that way. I mean, when you elect somebody to Congress, after you elect them, they forget about you. They do whatever they want to do. They don't care about their constituents. We at the present time, we, the public, have very little influence on what's going on, and it's time to stop that. And I think that's why I love Donald Trump, because he's an outsider. He's not part of this whole Washington system. And I think if he gets in, there are going to be a lot of changes that will be made, and one of them will be in the area of education, because he understands how important that is.
Yeah, well, right now, I keep on telling everyone, you've got to become involved. You've got to start at the local level and work your way up all the way up to the federal level. But you got to start at the grassroots local level first. And I had a school board member come to my Tea Party meeting the other day, and he said it. He said, you have to see the difference that occurs with the school board by simply having one or two members of the public sitting there watching what we're doing. He says the temperature in the room changes dramatically. And where the school board may think they can get away with something, the second a member of the public is sitting there watching them, the table is then turned.
Well, I think it's the same thing with colleges and universities and all this crazy business of safe spaces. I think if the parents got more involved and made it clear to the universities how they feel about this, and perhaps put their money where their mouth is and stop making donations, I think we'd have a big change in the way that the colleges are behaving.
I said that a long time ago. If the parents and if the sponsors of these colleges just stop sending their kids there, stop making the donations, stop making the endowments, make your wallet talk for you, these colleges would turn around in a cocaine heartbeat. Go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, I was just wanting to know what you thought about what's going on in the Supreme Court in America. It used to be an institution that was highly revered, and we trust their judgment. Now today it seems so partisan.
Well, what I think is, you're absolutely right. When I was a student, I had a tremendous amount of respect for the Supreme Court. There used to be some really brilliant people on the Supreme Court. But frankly, that's not the case today. I mean, we have some people on the Supreme Court that should not be on the Supreme Court, number one. Number two, it should not be a job for life. These people should be appointed for a couple of years and then let somebody else get in there. And number three, what the court does essentially is they decide, where they want to go politically, and then they write their opinions to justify their decision, not the other way around. And that's not what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. And also, the whole idea that the courts are driving what's happened in the dialogue in the country, that's not the job of the courts. The job of the courts is to act as a check on other parts of the government, especially the Supreme Court. So I think that I am very, very disappointed with what has happened with the Supreme Court.
One of the most frustrating things I found is when they made the decision over gay marriage. And from day one, I've been telling the conservative side, take the word marriage out of the argument and replace it with civil union. Because every state in the union and even the territories have a law on the books so that when a couple wants to become a domestically, legally recognized couple with the all the legal rights of inheritance, child custody, pet custody, whatever property, if you have that, you have a civil union because you have to go to a government office to get the license to recognize that civil union. Once that union is performed officially by a religious institution, it goes from elevating from a civil union to a religious marriage. So take the religious part out of it, use the argument of a civil union, and don't tell churches and other religious institutions how to define the religion by defining the word marriage. And no one is listening to that. And again, it's the media that has allowed the argument to drive the word marriage forward. Well,
I'll tell you how I feel about it. This comes back to this whole issue of the protected classes. We have a number of minorities that are very vocal. The LGBT, MBMT, or whatever they call it, community has a big lobby. They are very, very vocal. And they have been having a tremendous effect on these judges and on the media. I think that what we should be doing is according all of these minority groups their right to think the way they want, to behave the way they want, as long as they're not hurting anybody else. But where these groups go too far, in my opinion, is they're expecting everybody else to glorify their position and go running around saying, "Oh, aren't these people terrific?" I really don't care. I'm not interested in it. That's their platform. I'm all in favor of gays having the right to be gay, but don't try to make me go running around with a flag saying, "Aren't gays terrific?" It's gone too far. It's gone too far, and this is what you're pointing out as an example of that. Where they're not just getting, not only their rights are not only being accorded, but it's going beyond that, and it's beginning to infringe on my rights. Yeah, you have a business, and you want to, say for example, you're a photographer, you are putting a piece of yourself into the work that you produce. So every single photo that you take is a part of you, reflecting the way you see things. So you're going to ask me that I object to same-sex marriage. I don't want to see it performed by my priest in my church. If you go to the Unitarian church down the road and they're willing to perform it, all the more power to you. I'm not going to interfere with that, because if that religion recognizes same-sex marriage, go for it. But if I'm turning around and giving you a piece of myself, then why would
I want to do your wedding. I'll refer you to another photographer that is probably almost as good as I am.
Do you
I'll be
remember
happy to
the
refer you.
case of the wedding cake?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that case with the wedding cake?
Mm-hmm.
The people were making the wedding cake and they didn't want to make it because it had some kind of gay theme to it. I think there's a difference. If you come in, if I'm making cakes and you come in and you're a gay person and I say I don't want to deal with you because you're gay, that should be against the law. That's discrimination. But if you come in and you say I want you to make a cake with some kind of gay figures on it, I think I have a right to say I don't want to make that kind of cake. I'll make you a cake, but I don't want to make that kind of cake. But the court is saying that I have to make that kind of cake. That to me is involuntary servitude.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, we were talking about the media kowtowing to these special interest groups. Of all things, Playboy magazine. And Playboy magazine is known for its centerfold, its nude women. But they've had a feature of women in hijabs. So Playboy magazine is now caving to the Muslim community?
Well, don't get me started on that one.
That's why I brought it up, to get you started on that one.
I have some very extreme views that I express in my book, starting out with the president who refuses to call terrorism Islam. He refuses to say Islamic terrorism. I believe that our national security and the lives of all of us are being placed in danger because the government refuses to call it what it is. And we have to be able to deal with the problem and call it what it is. And all these people who are trying to apologize for Islam and the barbaric doctrines of Islam, these people are doing us a disservice.
No, that is an underestimated, understated statement, if I can get my teeth in put backwards. Another thing you discussed in your book is your love of, and I'm being a little sarcastic here, of people's using mottos like hope and change.
Oh, well, that hope and change thing, that was fantastic. You have something like hope and change. What does it mean? I mean, it doesn't mean anything, but it got Obama elected. Because the beauty of that phrase is, if you were voting, you could start a sentence with hope and change, and you could end it any way you wanted, depending on your political point of view. You could say, let's have hope and change, and therefore we'll have more liberal laws. Or you could say, let's have hope and change, and we'll have more conservative laws. So what people did was they voted for Obama based on what they wanted him to do, not on what he wanted to do. And that's how Mussolini got elected. And that's how Hitler got elected. And I'm not comparing Obama. I'm not one of these people that's comparing Obama to Hitler, so don't get carried away, folks. But I'm saying that's how these dictators got elected, because the voters were duped into thinking that the dictator was going to do what they wanted him to do. No, he's going to do what he wants to do. And that was the danger presented by hope and change. We were all hoodwinked with that. From his point of view, it was very clever. But from our point of view, it was a death knell.
Well, go ahead, Curtis.
We all have a lot to be concerned about and feel threatened by with the Hillary Clinton.
Curtis, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. Hearing you.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Are you on a speaker? Yeah, it's better.
Yeah. But what I was saying, we have a lot to fear about a Hillary presidential situation. But the thing is, what I am most concerned about, and there's not a lot of talk about it now, is the left bringing back the fairness doctrine. In other words, the means by which
what doctrine? I'm sorry.
He was talking about
what doctrine?
The fairness doctrine.
The fairness doctrine to silence talk radio, and nobody's talking about that.
And the fairness doctrine is what now?
That was where
one of the things we have to be concerned about if Hillary gets elected.
Well, the fairness doctrine
Yeah,
was
well-
was where radio stations had to give equal time to opposing opinions. So if you had a conservative radio station, you were going to be mandated to give equal time to progressives.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to know what I think about that? I think
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. I mean, that's what I think about it. And that again that's where the courts go too far and the government goes too far. I think the government is inserting itself into our lives in all kinds of places, in all kinds of ways that it shouldn't be. The government should not be involved in our lives. The government should not be, the amount of regulations in my community. If I want to chop down a tree, I have to get an act passed by the state legislature in order to do. The government is in my face everywhere. And what you're talking about is another example of that. It's just going too far.
Well, Ed, I had a quick question. It kind of ties right in with all that. That being, in your opinion, what do you think the best way for us, the people, would be to take back our authority over the government? Is it just through elections, a convention of states, something nobody's thought of yet that you've been kicking around? What do you think would be the best?
One thing we need to have is term limits. Because I think that the problem stems from this class, talking about another class of people. We have a class of professional politicians. These people are in this for life. Hillary Clinton, what has she ever done? She never ran a business. She never did anything. Her whole life she's been involved somehow in the political process. And what's amazing to me is these people go into politics, and 20, 30 years later they retire and they're multimillionaires. Now, how is that possible if they're not crooked? We got to stop that. We got to change this, because the people who founded the country did not intend for there to be a professional class of politicians. Madison, Jefferson, Hamilton, they were just private citizens. We need to have term limits. We need to prevent these people from... do you know that if you get elected to Congress and you serve for 2 years, you get a pension? You get your full salary for the rest of your life? $175,000 a year for life?
Mm.
I mean, this is crazy. These people are, it's crazy. And they don't have to abide by Obamacare. They have their own special health plan and their own deals, and they get free haircuts and all kinds. We have a political class that is running us, and we have to get them out and change the way in which that's again why I love Donald Trump, because for the first time in my life I'm hearing somebody running for office who is not acting like they're following some kind of a script.
No, from your lips to God's ears, may he be elected. But you are right. We do have a political class, but I'd go from term limits. I would take it one step further. I would then turn around and say that any benefits they receive, whether it is through pay, pension, medical, whatever, is to be paid through by the state they were elected from. Let the state legislators then dictate what that salary is, what those benefits are, because now you are making that elected official, whether they be a congressman or a senator, beholden to their constituents in the state they are being elected from. So not only do you limit their terms, but you also control the purse strings at home.
Well, that's not a bad idea. I would be concerned also about the state political apparatus, because I look at the state legislature here in California, and I can't believe some of the things that they're doing. These people are even worse than Congress. So, it's like you're substituting one wolf for another wolf.
Well, that's why we call California the left coast.
Yeah, it's really getting to be crazy here. Absolutely crazy.
Well, that's why we're lucky we have someone like you that at least brings a little sanity to the people of California. But Ed, it has.
I am writing a book based on it's like that movie Network where the guy said, I'm sick, I'm mad as hell and I don't want to take it anymore. Remember that movie?
Yes, I'm mad as hell and I won't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't want to take. Yeah, that's how I feel, and that's why I wrote In Lies We Trust. Somebody had to do it. Somebody had to, say, this is crazy. Enough already. Enough.
Well,
Enough lies,
I think that was Peter Finn.
And these people are supposed to be working for us, not the other way around.
Well, that is the God's honest truth. Now, people can get your book by going to Amazon.com and looking for In Lies We Trust, How Politicians and the Media Are Deceiving the American Public. Or they can go to your website, which is your last name, BROWO. If I can get that right.
No.
BROW. I can't do this. Good Lord. I'm sorry. I'm dyslexic. BRODOW. Brodow.com. I knew I'd get it out sooner or later.
You got it.
Well, it has been an absolute.
Listen, I've had to live with this name my whole life. My name is pronounced Brodo. People pronounce it Brodow, Brodo, Broodoo, Brody, Brodow, but Brown. You get used to it. But I thought about changing my name, something like John Smith, but I never quite did it.
Well, try with my last name, Ubelis. And every single time someone looks at, Miss Ann, how do you pronounce your last name? But you see, I married into my name. I can always change it by divorcing my husband.
Oh.
I take the easy way out.
It's nice to be different. I look at it this way. It's nice to be different. Why have the same name? Why have an easy name? Have a name that's distinctive.
Well, actually, I got to tell a true story. This is the God's honest truth. That when I was a New York City police officer, I had divorced my first husband. I went into the police department under the last name of Hardy, divorced my husband, went back to my maiden name, which was King, and then later on, I met my second husband and got married. So by the time I ended up going up to roll call, it's like, all right, what name are you this week? So women have a little easier.
You were New York City police?
Yes, sir.
You were a policewoman?
Yes.
Holy cow.
Oh, man. But that I retired back in 96 from there, so it's a whole different world today, and I don't know how these men and women out there can do the job under the circumstances, especially this administration that has caused such a divide between law enforcement and the public and between the races here. I've never seen an administration like this. And I swore Jimmy Carter was probably the worst president I thought I would ever live through. And this man has proven me absolutely wrong. But we got to take our nation back, Ed.
Well, yeah, we got to do it. So read my book, In Lies We Trust, and get smart.
Yes, I want everyone to read it because it is an excellent book. It's very, very informative. And as you said, towards the end of the last chapter, you've got the 10 steps that people can take to educate themselves, become critical thinkers, and stop following whoever the flavor of the month is as the supposed leader of the day. We've got to stop being sheep. All right, Ed. Well, Ed, it has been a pleasure. And again, I'm going to tell everyone to check out your website and check out the book. And the majority of people that listen to the show listen to the podcast later on. So we'll get thousands of hits on this. So they can all they have to do is just go to the link, click on it, and go directly to your site and get the book.
Great.
All right. And it looked like
Thank you so much.
Oh, it has been our pleasure. And we'll welcome you back. And I'll get a hold of Jonathan and get you come back in the near future and plug the book some more.
Love to.
All right.
It's been fun.
And it it has been a great, thank you so much. So check out Ed Brodow. Wow, I'm sorry. I'm not even going to pronounce his name correctly. BROW. See that? I can't even spell today. Tim, do this for me.
That's okay.
Tim, do this for me.
Okay. Mr. Brodow. All right. Again, check it out at... I don't have it in front of me, actually. Give me just a second. I'll be happy to do that. I did it just Wednesday. You'd think I'd remember.
Oh, man. Oh, we a bunch of losers today. And I'm putting it up in the chat room.
It's at BRODOW.com.
Thank you. Thank you. One of us got it right. And I put it up in the chat room so people can look at it in the chat room, click on it, and download the book. And I did see our second guest popped into the chat room, into the studio, and then popped right back out. So hopefully she'll call back again. But we're waiting for Susan Lewis Simmons to call in. And she's got a fantastic website that I didn't know existed. And I wish I did because when I was a cop, could have used the services that she offers. That's called Under the Shield, and it's an excellent website. So I do believe she's back here. Let's bring her on, and I do believe this is Susan Lewis Simmons. Good afternoon, Susan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome aboard to Southern Century here. And I was saying,
thank you so much for having me on the show.
oh, it is our pleasure. I wish I knew about your website when I was working, because I could have used someone like you so much. And some of my fellow officers, I didn't know about this. And this is the first I've heard of it.
Well, and that breaks my heart, because we have tried for 25 years to get the word out. And thanks to shows like yours, we are finally able to hit a much larger audience, because I hear that everywhere I go around the country.
Yeah, and I didn't realize it. I was looking at the calendar the other day, and as of September 1st, I have been retired 20 years. Jeez, I can't believe the time has flown. So 5 years before I retired, I could have used you guys, because I know somewhere along the way I was probably in trouble doing something wrong.
Well, that's awesome, and it's nice for other officers to hear that there really is life after retirement.
Yes, some of us do make it through. Are you on a speakerphone or something? Because you're kind of faint to me.
I am, and now I'm off of it. So is that better?
Oh, that is a lot better, a lot better. Now, tell us about the website Under the Shield.
Okay. Under the Shield started basically from an event that happened on May 28, 1992. And it's something that we're hearing, unfortunately, that's more and more common today through social media. But that is when law enforcement officers are killed in the line of duty and their families and friends find out about it. At that time, in 92, it was via the media. And now people, unfortunately, are finding out via social media. And this was just something that was not acceptable to me. I was married to a federal agent in drug enforcement and was a litigation paralegal at the time, and decided that the resources for families just weren't there. And so I quit my job and went back and got my master's in counseling and human development in order to be able to provide the resources that I felt like were lacking for our law enforcement officers and their families.
Yeah, well, it's really difficult, because unless you're in law enforcement, it's very hard for you to understand the mindset of a law enforcement officer. And that's why a lot of them will only gravitate to fellow members of the law enforcement as friends. And when they get home, it's hard for them to explain to their spouse or their children, what is going on in their life, in their head, because they can't comprehend it. They don't understand unless they've actually sat by you as you did your tour, walked with you as you did your beat, listened to what you had to deal with day in and day out. There is no way for them to comprehend.
Well, that's true. And, one of the things that we really find very frustrating at Under the Shield is that even nowadays, 25 years ago I heard it, but I'm still hearing it today, and that is that officers are being taught in academies that they need to keep their personal and their professional separate. The reality is that is causing more problems than anything else within relationships, because they can't keep the two things separate. We refer to it at Under the Shield as law enforcement's a lifestyle. It's 24/7. Families, your personal and professional collide together. And daily, these couples that...
You just faded out there. Susan, you just faded out.
I did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I back with you?
Yeah, now you are.
Can you? Okay. But in the academy, they're teaching this concept of keeping things personal and professional separate, but the reality is that's an impossibility. And what I'm seeing these days, while they're saying things like, isolate from me and the family.
Are you walking around or something? Because you're starting to fade in and out. We're not getting a good connection here.
Maybe.
Not getting a good connection.
Do you want me to call?
Yeah, if you
call back.
Yeah, if you can try that, and then I'll wait for you to call back. We'll fill in. But it is true that a lot of these people are being told, a lot of these officers, men and women, being told to keep your lives separate. But that's an absolute impossibility. You see things that are day in and day out. You see a child that's injured, and then when you go home, you see your own child. And how do you separate those two visions, those two sights that are in your head? How do you deal with the domestic violence situation where a husband and wife are screaming at each other, and then you go home and you're trying to explain to your spouse exactly what you saw, and you end up in a fight with your spouse? So, Susan, you're back with us.
Okay, great. Is this better?
Oh, absolutely excellent. Absolutely excellent. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, I heard what you were talking about the domestic violence, and that is an issue in law enforcement. It's very different from domestic violence in the general population. I think it comes from that frustration of being taught to keep personal and professional separate, and the reality is they bring it home in their mood. They may not talk to you about the day's event, but they're bringing it home in their mood, and then there's conflict at home because the families assume he's in a bad mood because of something they've done. And it's all lack of training in this area. That's the part that is the good news. We can train people as long as we're including families in this training, which is something that we do. We have a class called Warrior Survival at home and on the street, and the spouses come with the officer. And it's all about educating everybody.
Yeah.
Isn't it true that in law enforcement there's a high rate of suicide?
Absolutely. We don't pay a lot of attention. Well, we don't pay a lot of attention to statistics that under the shield in this population because they're not very active. But I think we're all willing to admit the numbers I'm seeing are anywhere from one every 24 hours to one every 17 hours. Again, 24 or 17, it doesn't matter. That's too many people. And the reason we believe that's the case is because of what we call the psychological garbage can. Because this personal and professional comes colliding together, they have one psychological garbage can. And it fills up with the horrible things that they see, the frustrations that they experience, the criticism they get either through their agency or from the public, the conflict at home. And I give an example in class of an officer, and with his permission, an officer called me one time when I first started the company. And he told me, he said, Susan, I support what you do, but I don't need you. I got a lot of years on this job. I've dealt with dead babies and trash cans, mutilated bodies, horrible things. And he said, and I'm good. Well, years later, he called me, and he was a mess. And he was in uniform in his capital city downtown, middle of the day, sitting on a curb outside his marked unit crime. And I said, what in the world? And he said, I am a sick man. And I said, tell me what's happened. And he said, I told you, I don't cry over dead babies and trash cans and those things. He said, I just saw a stray dog get run over. He said, it's not even my dog, and I'm devastated. And I told him, I said, you sit on that curb and you cry because the tears you're shedding are for a lot of years of seeing dead babies and trash cans, mutilated bodies, horrible things, people doing horrible things to each other. And I told him, I said, come to the office, and he did, and he spent 4 hours sitting on my couch emptying his garbage can.
Yeah, it's
similar to PTSD.
Yeah.
Similar to PTSD in the military.
It is, and one of the things that I get very frustrated by with the mental health community is all these diagnoses of PTSD, implying that it is a permanent disorder. Are you familiar with Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman?
No, I'm not.
I've heard the name.
Dave is a good friend, a colleague. We train together around the country, and he's written some really good books. One is called On Combat, and one is called On Killing. And he's a former Army Ranger paratrooper. And both of us feel like that there's way over diagnosis of it being a disorder. We don't feel like it's necessarily a disorder unless there's something else along with it, like a traumatic brain injury. We feel like that most of these people have what's called post-traumatic stress response. And it's a normal reaction. And, for example, our military, I have a son who's just finished up his time with the Marine Corps, and, of course, he's going in law enforcement. And what I'm seeing is we train them to go over and do a job, but we forget to train them how to come home. And the same thing's happening with law enforcement. We teach them how to go out, be this problem solver in the community. But in instead of training them how to come home and assimilate the family into the lifestyle, we frustrate them by saying keep personal and professional separate.
You know, Susan, there was something I have to say, though, because one of the reasons why I think I divorced my first husband while I was still on the job is that I would come home and I would need to talk and I would need to say, you know, what I saw, what I did that day. And he didn't want to listen at all. And this is the problem. A lot of us do want to come home, but we're told, you know, keep it within inside you. I don't want to hear it. And then that's where the fights break out. Because it happens to men and women. And so what you're doing is training the spouse. Or do you also train the children how to listen to, what to look for?
Actually, that is something that we are in the process of developing it Under the Shield now. I've talked with several people that are in the field who also work with law enforcement. And we do have someone, one of our stress coaches specializes in working with children. And that is what we're putting together, is a training for the kids, especially with all the horrible things that are happening between Baton Rouge, Orlando, Dallas, in California and everything. Kids are very concerned and they're somewhat traumatized by everything they're hearing. They need to be able to voice and express these things. So that is something that we are in the process of putting together.
Well, another thing that you had mentioned about this other officer, that several years later, it all came out. And I got to say, even though I had retired 5 years later, when 9/11 happened, that is when it really hit me. You know, here I am retired, and I think I don't have to think about this stuff anymore. But watching it, because being a New York City cop, I knew exactly what the responses were going to be and how they're going to triage people in the plaza. I knew everything that was going to happen, and I could see the buildings coming down. And I think it's that day that everything just crushed home to me. And even to now, if my husband walks up behind me and I don't hear him, I will jump. I mean, he's gotten to the point where he wants to walk into a room. He walks into the room and he'll tap the door.
I need to spend some time talking. We need to get that psychological garbage can emptied of your words.
Well,
I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because I've done a couple of shows on PTSD, and thankfully, these people were working with the military and everything else, and with victims that suffer from PTSD, whether they're a victim of a crime or if they saw something traumatic happening. And some of the things they taught me helps me get through it. So I'm not as bad as I used to be. I'm not sitting there on the couch crying over an Oreo cookie commercial. I'm not that bad anymore. But it comes out in different ways.
It does. And I was honored to have been a responder to New York. I spent 5 weeks in New York City through a group I'm sure you're familiar with, PAPA, Police Organization Providing Peer Assistance, which is basically NYPD officers who are trained in peer support. And I was with them providing critical incident debriefing to the NYPD, and occasionally we had some from FDNY. And again, the purpose of those debriefings was to help them on a daily basis keep those levels of psychological garbage down. And, there's still a lot of that needs to be done, even for those of us who spent time up there. That was one of the things that I found. I finally got to make my first trip back in the spring, and was able to work through a lot of things that were bothering me that I didn't really even realize were bothering me until I went back and saw the city back alive and those things. But it's about education and training. We're just not training people what to look for and to understand, and then they completely overreact when they're having these emotional issues. These are normal responses. We just haven't prepared people on how to deal with them and what they can do that's safe. That's the key. Who can they talk to? Where can they go that they don't have to fear losing their jobs or their right to carry a firearm?
Well, Susan, then you know a friend of mine. He happens to be the PBA president, Patty Lynch.
I have not met Patty. Bill Genet is the one that I worked with through primarily. Bill was kind of running the show. I don't know if you're familiar with Bill or not.
Well, no, like I said, I retired in 96, but Patty and we rode together a couple of times. He was in my squad. He ended up being our PBA representative for our command before he became the PBA president. So, I know Patty pretty well. I haven't spoken to him in years, but I still call him a friend of mine.
And we may have crossed paths, but like I said, we were primarily there with Papa. which is, they used to go by another name, and I can't remember what the other name was, but they had a hotline and everything that you could call in anytime and talk with someone if you were having issues or struggles or whatever.
All right, and Tim, I'm sorry, I cut you off, so go ahead, Tim.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just curious, when you were talking earlier about your coursework where you're trying to train the couples to be better able to communicate, what some of the bigger obstacles were in getting that communication bridge there, because I would imagine that the mindset, too, is probably most officers want to try and protect their families from what they deal with on a daily basis. Is that a major obstacle?
It is. And that's one of the things that I tell them. It's admirable that you want to protect your family from the garbage. And the example that I give them is, again, when I was married to this federal agent, I can remember him coming home one day. This was, of course, prior to my starting under the shield. And he asked what was for dinner. And I said spaghetti. And he came completely unhinged. Well, my first reaction was to get defensive about why is he getting mad over what I cooked for dinner when he didn't offer any suggestions of what he wanted. And what it ultimately came down to was that was a day he had spent in a meth lab where children the same ages as our kids were exposed.
Oh, wow.
And so when you can start putting examples to these things, which is why it's important at Under the Shield that all of our stress coaches have some level of experience in this lifestyle, then people can begin to see how it has affected them at home. Now, I do understand, and we do have spouses often in classes who go, I don't want to hear the gory details. And I tell them, you don't have to hear the gory details, but you do need to understand what they've been exposed to that day that is affecting their mood. So just because they're not bringing it home and talking about it, they walk through that door with every bit of that psychological garbage in their garbage can, and it's going to manifest itself. And so when families begin, and it's funny to watch them in class because you'll see the wife and she'll nudge the husband, or the non-law enforcement nudges the law enforcement, and then I'll say something else, and then you'll see the law enforcement nudge the non-law enforcement one. And I tell them it's admirable that you want to protect them, but you're not protecting them.
Right. Well, I've always thought it's important to recognize the mindset, because nobody's putting on a badge without having concern for other people. And it's only natural to be more protective of your family than strangers. So I can definitely see where that would be an issue. But, yeah, I think a lot of people who are in other lines of work have a bad habit of taking for granted the communication they can have. And unfortunately, too many of us aren't taking advantage of what we could say. Whereas I can't imagine not being able to come home and, if I wanted to be able to talk to my wife and tell her what happened at work today.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, there's another facet to this also. We experienced it. Our children are now 26 and 30, but when they were 4 and 7, they were almost executed at a mall local to where we live. And we did not even realize that this person had a desire to kill our children for almost a year.
Wow.
And this was, yeah, so we had to involve our children. We had to show them pictures of this individual and say, you know, what this man wanted to do. And we had to have law enforcement escorting our children on field trips and in and out of school for almost a year. So the lifestyle can be there whether they want their families involved or not. We're at high risk. The only way you can protect people is by educating them.
Well, we've got a question from another fellow radio host that's in the chat room, Kel Fritzy. She's asking, and I'm going to say probably Kel, no, because I don't see it myself. But she asks, do those suffering from PTSD see a trigger of trauma coming on? For example, do you have them recognize the fact that they're starting to have an episode?
Well, that's really difficult, especially with the conditions that law enforcement works under, because a lot of times what's being perceived as post-traumatic stress disorder would be the hypervigilance or the hyperstartle. Well, the reality is that's something they have to have day to day in order to survive. They have to be aware of their surroundings. You know this, Annie, walk into a restaurant and you can pretty much spot them because the law enforcement officer is going to have his back to a wall, not to a door.
Exactly.
And there's some people who would see that as paranoid behavior. Well, we call that prepared. So it's really hard when you try to transition law enforcement and what they have to do on a day-to-day basis with other industries where they may be removed from where they could possibly have trauma, like our veterans when they come home. And so it's really hard to talk about triggers. We try to get them physiologically back in balance and get them sleeping better. Then we see that the triggers and those things, they become almost something that they don't have a negative reaction to.
Well, it's funny because I don't know if you deal with this also. Like, for example, when I retired, for several years, I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking I had to get to work. I had to get my uniform on, I had to get cleaned up, and I have to get out the door and get to work. And for years, even after I moved here to South Carolina, I would occasionally wake up where I'd be in like that twilight state until I finally woke all the way up, and I'd be sitting up in bed and looking around at where I am. Did it full realization come to me? Hey, listen, dummy, you're retired. But then, as you said, problems with sleep.
Well, and that just reinforces what we say about this being a lifestyle. It's hard to turn that lifestyle off after that many years. And again, training comes in. This is really important, even in educating those who are about to retire as to what life is going to be like when they leave it and how to kind of disassociate from it, even though the high risk is still there, because the people that they may have made mad or put in prison or whatever will not look at that officer 10 years out or 20 years out if they run into them and say, oh, they're retired. That's not the way that works.
No, it doesn't. Now, I'm lucky. I'm very blessed because I look one way when I'm in uniform and I look something completely different when I'm out. And this, again, is a true story because I had done some overtime. I had made an arrest. I came back to the precinct, got changed into my civilian clothes, and I said, on the way out, I'm going to stop by the bar and have a cocktail before I drive all the way out where I live. It was like a 45-minute ride. And I walk in the bar, and at the other end of the bar was the guy I had busted just hours before. He did not recognize me out of uniform. I turned around and got out of there, and I said, oh, for the grace of God. Because the guy turned around and said next time he saw me, he was going to kill me. True story.
Wow. Well, and, and that's one thing I have to commend the NYPD on. And even here in Phoenix, where I live now, and some agencies out here, the officers go into their department in civilian clothes, change into their uniform, go on duty, come back out. They aren't going to and from work in their uniform, but in many parts of the country, officers are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real problem. But I understand also why they have to, because most of them have take-home cars, and they can't be in that car in civilian clothes either.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real mixed bag there as to how all this works. But if agencies can have them come in civilian clothes, change, go back out, do their tour, go back in, change, and come back out as civilians to go home, that is highly preferred, especially where families are concerned, and for exactly that reason.
Well, there's also
you can look very different.
Yeah, there's also the psychological thing that once you take that uniform off and you put it in the locker, you're taking that part of your personality and you're closing it away, and now you can think like a normal person as you drive yourself home. That's how I kind of looked at it. It's like I'm taking off the mask, I'm putting it away, and I'm going back to normal me.
Well, and that transition time is important. Although, again, we've got a lot of law enforcement officers who don't have much of a transition time. And, again, families have to be brought into this loop, not excluded.
Right. Now, your website is Under the Shield. It's the name of the group, undertheshield.com. But you also offer them an 800 confidential number. Now, is this manned 24 hours, 7 days a week?
It is. It
All
is.
right.
We have stress coaches manning that, as well as our Facebook page, which is Under the Shield Foundation. And they can private message the page, and the only people seeing those messages are our stress coaches and our peer support. We have law enforcement officers who are trained in peer support who are also manning those messages, and if it's something out of their realm, they will immediately text me or one of the other stress coaches. And that's 24 hours a day also.
Well, I'm going to give the number out, which is 855-889-2348. Now, I was trying to put it on the show description, so I've got to do a little fudging around with it. So it will be on the show description after we come off air, so people can either click on the link which says Under the Shield and go directly to your website and contact you, go to your Facebook page, contact you, and I'll have this number in there later on, because the majority of people that listen to the show listen to the podcast in the archives later on. You get thousands of hits, and I want them to have this at their fingertips as they're listening into the show, so it will be up there. And again, I'm going to remind everyone, it's 855-889-2348. Now, how do you end up working with these various departments? Do they contact you? Do you look out to them? For example, like you had the incident in Ferguson, in Baltimore, New York, LA. Do you see something happening and reach out to them, or you wait for them to reach out to you?
Well, it depends. If there are agencies in areas where we have worked in the past, then I usually have contact information and I will reach out. What we usually provide through the agency is the training. The stress coaching, we typically do through police associations, FOPs, that type of thing, or through individuals finding out about it. And it's important for them to understand none of us are mandatory reporters. We have most of our stress coaches, although it's not a requirement, but most of our stress coaches have PhDs and master's degrees, but we all opted not to sit for a license exam. And so that takes us out of that mandatory reporting category, with the exception of child abuse. All of us are mandatory reporters for child abuse.
Yeah.
I don't care what position you are in the country. But with regards to the other suicidal, homicidal, etc., we are not mandatory reporters. And suicidal law enforcement officers, we deal with them almost daily. And I find if I can get them to empty their garbage can, which could be 4 hours on a phone, we have no time restrictions as to how long we will be on with them. And again, they decide how they communicate with us. Whether it be phone call, we will give our cell numbers. They can text us. They can Facebook us. We don't care how they reach out. We want them to decide how they're most comfortable. And we have no time restrictions on our sessions. So if I'm on a call with someone and someone else calls the 855 number, it will roll over to another stress coach. If they're tied up, it rolls to another stress coach. And the only number we have is the 855 number. That's what pops up on our phones. We do everything we can to keep the anonymity and the confidentiality, because if we don't know who you are, then there's automatic confidentiality.
Mm. Now, I was just going to ask, how do people end up becoming one of the coaches?
Well, that's something that we are real excited about. We had our first stress coach certification here in Phoenix in January. It was kind of the prototype class, and we are going to have another one between February and April of next year. They can email us off the website, and again, we're looking for people who have either done it, been married to it, raised by it, or given birth to it. And we're really, I hate using this word, but we really are. We're targeting people like yourself, Annie, who have retired, because we see a huge place for them to feel needed, and that caregiver side to once again kind of be activated, which I think all law enforcement officers have within them, a need to make a difference and to help. And our retirees have the most valuable experience, and we're letting them go home and sit. And this is something that they can do from their cell phone, sitting on the beach in Belize, for all I care. But it's about utilizing the real experience that's out there. And so if they're interested, all they have to do is send us an email, and we will send them the information as soon as we get those dates set.
And how long is the course?
It's 5 days. And, you know, wouldn't it be awful to have to come to Phoenix for 5 days in February or March? Wouldn't that just be terrible?
Lovely scenery.
If you live in Michigan or Minnesota or someplace like that.
Oh, man. And I would love to go out there, because I was horseback riding out there. It was so much fun going up through the mountains and everything. But unfortunately, I can no longer go horseback riding. My back is just that bad. So that's all I need, one good horse.
You should come out and be a part of this. Tim, did you have a question? I keep hearing you in the background.
That's Curtis. Go ahead, Curtis.
Curtis.
Yes, my question is, what is morality like for law enforcement, especially in this politically charged atmosphere today with Black Lives Matters and everybody's pointing a finger at, law enforcement?
Right. Did you ask what their morale is like?
Yeah, do you see a lot of morale issues, when you talk to?
I do. There's three characteristics that we see pretty consistently in law enforcement officers. They have attention deficit disorder, which is a good thing, given the nature of the job. They can change and shift gears as they need to. They are adrenaline junkies, and again, more importantly, they're caregivers. And right now, they feel like they can't win for losing. And our concern at Under the Shield is that there's going to be too much hesitation because of all the negative media. And none of us are saying that there aren't bad police officers, but they are such the minority. Every profession, counselors included, everything. There are people who shouldn't be doing the job that they're doing, but this is such a minuscule number in law enforcement. But people are painting them with a broad brush. And depending on how they are treated through their agency, really determines the morale. And if chiefs or sheriffs are very supportive of their people, make sure they're getting the training that they need, they're not being Monday morning quarterbacked over every little decision that they make, of course morale is higher. But in agencies where they're saying things like, you're not going to be warriors, we want you to be guardians or peacekeepers, which is really not fair. These people by nature are guardians and peacekeepers. That's in their core values. But you have to train a warrior. And it doesn't mean that the warrior is always out there looking for a fight, but they are prepared for it should it present itself. Well, and those kinds of things are conflicting also.
Yeah, because I'm reading the news articles. Susan, reading the news articles, looking at what's going on in Los Angeles and Chicago, these bird brains are coming up with these ideas that should a police officer enter a situation where someone's welding a knife, they're supposed to run back. They're supposed to step back, supposedly to de-escalate. That's not what we do. We disarm the subject, and if it happens to be an emotionally disturbed person, we take them over to the psych ward and you get them evaluated and get them treated. It doesn't mean simply because you're waving a knife that you're going to commit a crime. We want to know what's going on and why it's happening so we can deal with it. But what they're telling people, the cops in Chicago and L.A., is to step back, wait. That person's got a knife, and if an innocent individual walks into the field of the dispute, you've got now a civilian that could possibly be killed. No, that's not what the cops
do. And a much
do.
bigger issue.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and it's just like when they came out with the policy in New York of, close your eyes, breathe deep, take 10 seconds before you actually make the decision to pull the trigger. In 10 seconds, a lot of people can be dead.
10 seconds?
Complete contradiction.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Unbelievable.
It's just a contradiction. Yeah. One of the things that I point out in academies, I go, if you don't want paramilitaristic police, then you better train them through a classroom setting. But you can't train people to be paramilitaristic, which I personally think in today's environment they have to have that type training. Then that's the kind of officer they'll be, and that means they'll be prepared for whatever. And they're out there to protect the citizens. But if you're telling them to retreat because something bad's about to happen, then I don't really even know what the purpose of law enforcement officers being out on the streets would be.
No, not at all. And this is what the mindset is in today's society. And I applaud the men and women that go out there and serve as first responders. But I don't think the way I am, I could do the job today. Because I'd probably be one of the first people that they'd be screaming to have locked up. Because I would do my job. It is so frustrating. And I don't understand how they can do this. You have bureaucrats telling cops how to act and behave and do their job. Oh my goodness,
Well,
Susan.
and they need to take a long, hard look and see most agencies in this country are understaffed. You know, Phoenix is pushing 400 to 600 short by the end of the year, and where there are less law enforcement officers, crime is going to increase. And this concept of making police accountable and responsible for everything I might do, it's what's getting this country in trouble right now. And we cannot continue. Nobody wants to do this job, and the ones that have done it for years are like, they can't wait to get to retirement because it's such a different profession, and it's one that is causing frustration. And again, they're not out here looking to kill people. They are out here looking to make the streets safe and society better, and their hands are being tied from every direction.
Now that is the God's honest truth. Go ahead, Curtis.
Yes, Curtis.
Okay. Have you heard anything from the officers that you work with about body cams and how they feel about it?
Very mixed emotions. I think the biggest concern I hear consistently from all of them is the body camera only gives you very limited range of what the officer is exposed to, because it's pretty much directly what's in front of them. It doesn't show what's going on in their peripheral. It doesn't show what's going on behind them. So that's kind of their concern. You know, I think they'll all admit that there are times that the body cams have been of benefit, but I think we have to understand that body camera is not the end-all, be-all. It is one piece of the picture, and it isn't always what it presents, because there can be a lot more going on that is not shown on that body camera.
Yeah. You know, I've had mixed feelings about it myself, and I don't know if I would have welcomed it at the time I was working. Probably I would have, but it is true that you only have a narrow vision. But so far, I only can think of one case where it got a cop in trouble, and that was the shooting here in Charleston, where that officer was charged with the murder of the man he was chasing. I can only think of one instance where it was acted detrimental to the officer, but then again, the officer was committing a crime, honestly.
Well, there are a lot of concerns, too, about the body camera, because some of us had brought up when it first came out. I don't think they thought these things through completely. And, you know, there's a lot of situations. My concern is when an officer walks in and there are juveniles in a house, but there's no redacting of video, because then it looks like they're picking and choosing what they want people to see. I just think there's a lot of legal issues that are going to come about. And unfortunately, there may be some additional situations. We've seen this with the dash cam. I know there was one instance that Force Science was able to take a dash cam that the video you saw looked really bad, of an officer, and I can't remember where it was, had someone in the hood of their car, and he said he was behind him frisking, checking him, and he wound up shooting that suspect. Well, unless you slowed that videotape down just immensely, that's when Force Science was able to pull out that there was a gesture made by the individual of pulling something from his pocket or wherever. And it turned out to go from this officer's in a whole lot of trouble to this officer was justified.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of issues that really need to be looked at, and I think we may have jumped the gun a little bit in getting these things out without thinking everything through. We're kind of fixing it as we go along. And I'm not sure that's a good policy.
Yeah, because you mentioned, you know, juveniles in the scene. I would also say, you know, what about a rape victim? You know, do you want the body cam on when you're interviewing a rape victim? You know, some of these things do really have to be thought thoroughly through. Tim, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I mean, we've kind of touched on it a little bit already as far as morale is concerned and some of the issues that the bureaucrats are facing. But have you talked to people who come in just more afraid of something that hasn't happened yet? Because there does seem to be more of an effort to challenge police officers, especially these folks that I suppose are hoping to become heroes of the Black Lives Matter movement, if nothing else. They're almost intentionally forcing more and more of these situations where officers have to respond.
Absolutely. And, that's where the conflict comes in of what is their job. Because, we're seeing situations now where normally officers would have what they'd get people in custody, cuffed, and out, and the situation under control. And now, like in Baltimore, there were times those officers were told to retreat and basically let them burn the cities down. Well, this is in complete contradiction to what these officers have been trained to do. And so there's a lot of conflict there. And we talk in our training about the internal conflict of this job and how even that has changed. And so my fear is there's going to be a lot of hesitation by law enforcement officers for fear of being sued. I made this statement, and it breaks my heart every time I have to say it, and I never thought I would. But with my son going into law enforcement, I can almost deal with a line-of-duty death better than I could him going to prison for doing his job. And that's really the fear right now.
Yeah.
If I do it, it's going to be micromanaged. It's going to be looked at by everybody, Monday morning quarterback. Look at Darren Wilson, for example. He did nothing wrong, and his career is over, and nobody even knows where he is. We don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
That
Well, we got to.
happen, but it does. It's becoming more common.
We've got a caller in on the line. Let me bring the individual in from the Philadelphia area. You're on the air live with Southern Sense. I'm your hostess, Annie, the radio chick, along with my co-hosts, Curtis and Tim. Our guest is Susan Simmons of Under the Shield. To whom am I speaking?
Yeah, my first name is John. I'm calling from Philadelphia. I would like to say, in terms of the Charlotte situation, what I heard is that the wife of the man who was killed, that she had filed some type of restraining order against him because he had carried a weapon before. And in the process of the situation that occurred in Charlotte, he was holding a gun, and they were in an altercation. And then she approached after the altercation had happened, and that's when the police were there, and she knew that he had a gun. And that's the reason why she said to the police that she hopes that, someone didn't shoot him because of the fact that she knew he was carrying a weapon. So that's a situation where the racial tension has happened because the whole situation got out of control among the protesters. Hello?
Well, and that information also came out because it took a while for that information to come out. Yes.
But I think what the problem is today is the racial tension in the country is so high. And this Black Lives Matter movement, I think you have some anarchists that are in this movement. And they're causing this racial tension to inflame. And we had a police commissioner here by the name of Ramsey, and he was appointed by Obama. And what he suggested is that there be some type of nationalized standard in terms of for the police.
Oh,
because
jeez.
right now we have too many different police departments, and we don't have a national standard.
Oh, man. Susan.
I don't think you can have...
No.
A national standard would be awfully hard to have because things are very different in Phoenix than they are in Columbia, South Carolina, and Washington, D.C., and Seattle, Washington. And, I don't know how that would ever possibly work. I think there's a national philosophy among law enforcement that's a good one, if we can get back to it.
Well, but just in terms of the use of body cameras and the use of force, that it be some type of national standard in place so that everyone knows where they stand in terms of the use of force that has to be used in different situations. Because right now we don't have that, and we have different departments, and they have different policies.
Well, John, I agree with Susan. Having worked as a cop, what I did in New York City, those methods, those trainings, and those things would not always translate to where I live now here in South Carolina. And once you nationalize a law enforcement like that and you enforce it upon local communities, I don't think that's constitutional, honestly. I think that is in violation of the Constitution. I know the sheriffs have the ultimate power over, anything else. So, no, it's not going to be possible. And I agree. You cannot do that. You can try to mandate that all law enforcement carry these body cameras, but then how do you give an unfunded mandate to a local community? Say a local community of only 5,000 people. What if they can't afford it? What if they really truly don't need it because they got someone like Sheriff Andy Taylor, and he's keeping everything calm and peaceful? And Sheriff Andy Taylor would not last 5 minutes in New York City. You cannot have a national standard for law enforcement. The same way we should not have a national standard for education. This national standard idea does not work. We need less federal government involved in this situation, and let us take care of our own communities. And you talked about these agitators with Black Lives Matter. A lot of them, we're finding out, were paid agitators. An ad went out on Craigslist saying, hey, come on, we got a party for you to attend. And they were saying 73% of those agitators in Charlotte that were arrested didn't even live in the state of North Carolina. They were busting. They stopped one bus here at the North Carolina-South Carolina, an area they call south of the border. They stopped the bus from crossing over because they were busing in agitators, paid agitators, to Charlotte. Just how crazy is this, Susan? This is what we're dealing with, and this is what you and your organization, Under the Shield, is dealing with. John, I want to thank you for the call, but this is what we're dealing with. Everything has to have a national standard, and you wonder why police officers are so stressed out.
Exactly. And, the thing about it, too, is, what we see in our law enforcement officers is not dealing with mental illness. It's dealing with a level of frustration that they are in this for the right reasons. They want to do the right thing. They want to make their community safe. They want to get out here and get to know their communities. But the problem is that their hands, again, are being tied from so many different directions. And it's really unclear what's expected of them too many times. There's some really good departments in this country. There's an excellent one in North Alabama. And I kind of use them as my example of everything because the chief came up in that department. He's very supportive of his people. It's clear what's expected of them. And it's just an amazing agency, and morale is extremely high. Then I can give you 100 agencies that I know about where morale is extremely low because they treat one person one way, somebody else another way. The exact same things happen, but they're treated differently, and nobody knows what's expected. And one of the frustrations that we also have at Under the Shield, and we talk about this in our trainings, is we teach officers in academies how to use a gun, when to use it, where to use it, why to use it, how to use it, but we forget to teach them what's going to happen after they use it.
Mm-hmm.
And I used the example in a class not too long ago, and I was talking about the very beginning. Most of these officers didn't have a clue who I was, and I said, how many of you went to an academy and were given a gun? And they're looking at each other like, I think we're in the wrong classroom. And finally hands start going up. And I said, okay, how many of you were taught how to clean and maintain that firearm? It took them a few minutes. Finally hands start going up. And I looked at one guy and I said, why did they have to teach you how to maintain and clean that weapon? And he was a little frustrated at this point. And he looked at me and he said, because if they didn't, it could malfunction in this fire. And I said, you're absolutely right. Now, I said, let me take that gun, and I'm going to set it on the desk right here in front of me. And we're going to leave it here for this 8-hour training. At any point, is that gun going to get up and do anything on its own? And they're looking at me like I've lost my mind now. And they're like, no. And I said, well, here's my question to you. Why are we teaching our law enforcement officers more about maintaining their firearms, but we're not teaching them how to maintain themselves? That gun is only as effective as the person who's handling it.
Amen.
And if we're not teaching the people behind that gun how to take care of themselves, how to be healthy physically, emotionally, all of that, then you know what? We're in really bad trouble. And the majority of classes I go in, I taught one Tuesday night, and how many of you have had an effective stress management class? Several hands went up, but not one could tell me the definition of stress. And that's something we have worked really hard at Under the Shield to do, to simplify it, because stress is perceived to be as negative. And the reality is stress can be positive or negative. And our definitions that are in science, in medical dictionaries, in general dictionaries, cultural dictionaries, have very little, if any, in their definition of what could be positive in stress. So what we've done is we've said at Under the Shield, our definition is stress is change, marriage, divorce, promotion, demotion, relocation, whatever, birth of a child. Stressors are the activating events that bring about the change. All that's pretty benign, pretty simple. But the reality is stress reaction is what we need to be looking at, and that is based on a person's perception about the change. Well, perception can be swayed via training, life experiences. All of those things go into a person's perception about the change. We're not spending enough time talking about this and educating them and their families on this.
Well, you have a wonderful organization, and people can go to undertheshield.com, find out more about it. If they have someone out there, a loved one that is a law enforcement member, have them turn to your website, check it out. And like I said, you've got the 800 number. All calls are confidential. If they have someone that they feel needs help, give them this phone number, which is 855-889-2348. It will be up on the show description after we go off air. I'll clean it up. I'll make sure it gets up there. So when people listen to the podcast, Susan, they can learn about Under the Shield. Go to your website, undertheshield.com. Pick up the phone. Call someone that's confidential. Go to your Facebook page, which is Under the Shield Foundation. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And listen, spouses and families can call us also.
Well,
if their loved one that's in law enforcement won't, they can call us also.
Well, we have another question up in the chat room from Kel Fritzy. She wants to know, can Canadians call too? She's up in Toronto.
We actually have 2 stress coaches in Canada, and we hope to get more.
Well, then I will talk to my friend Kel, because maybe she'd like to have you on her show too, and she can talk to her fellow Canadians about you. So, Kel, we'll talk later on this afternoon. Yep, we're going to get the word around. And Tim has his own show, which is Tap into Truth. Maybe Tim get a hold of you and get you onto his show. We also have Vito Esposito, who was Mamma Mia, no Sharia Vito. Vito, I'll have him contact you also, because I've got a couple of people here that have their own shows that tune in and get you to do the round robin with us.
That would be wonderful. And we are a nonprofit. We aren't charging these people that are calling into us. We are a 501c3. Our goal is to get businesses supporting this nonprofit, because we feel like businesses really owe our law enforcement officers. Because if they stop and look at it, without police in our cities, deputies in our counties, and troopers on our highway, and all the other facets of law enforcement that we have to have, from communication through probation and parole, there's not a business in this country that can open their doors. And we are asking for a meager donation of $50 per year. We will send them a decal they can put in their window that says, "We support law enforcement." And we just feel like it's a way for the community to begin to show law enforcement that they're supporting them and backing them. And then in turn, what they're doing is they're providing these services to our law enforcement officers and our families.
Wow. Wow, that is fantastic. Man, God bless you, Susan, for coming up with this idea and going forward. And now you're 3 decades into it, and you're still going strong. Oh man, God has sent an angel to earth with you.
Well, thank you. I tell you, yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I was trying to sneak in there real quick, but I know it's just about time to get signed off and everything. So before I did, this is Tim. And I wanted to personally thank you for everything that you're doing. This is something that is just far too often overlooked, and you've obviously shown tremendous stick-to-itiveness, and you put in a lot of hard work and effort, something that needs to be done. So, again, thank you very much for caring enough to get up and actually go do it.
Well, thank you. I tell you, it's an honor for me. I tell these guys, other than my children, which are 2 huge honors of my life, my greatest honor is when someone in law enforcement or their families reach out for help, because I know how hard that is, and we do not take that lightly at Under the Shield, nor will we ever. We will if we don't have the answers, we will find somebody who does have the answers for them, and we'll make sure it's done in a safe manner where their jobs are not in jeopardy, because we can't afford to lose any more of them.
Yeah, and that is the big thing, the confidentiality, because I know too many departments, they'll have you go to the department shrink, and then the next thing you know, you're on the rubber gun squad. You're not going to see a promotion. It's horrible. It is absolutely horrible.
It is horrible.
It goes in your permanent record.
Because there's no reason.
Yeah. Well, Susan, I want to thank you for being with us. It has been a pleasure, and we'll have you back on. We're going to keep the word going out. I've already given Tim your phone number and Kelly your phone number for them to call you to get you onto their shows, and we'll spread the good word.
Well, thank you, and I tell you, and I have to say, I love your show. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, so I'm a Southerner at heart if you can't hear it in this accent. I lived in the South until 4 years ago when I moved the company to Arizona. Columbia will always be home, or South Carolina will always be home. And I just love the name of your show. I thought that was so appropriate, and I'm real excited about just getting out, and anything that I can ever do to help you guys. Would love to come back on anytime and let you know how things are moving along, especially with the stress coaching. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Oh, thank you. And I'm down here in the Low Country, so I've been to Columbia a couple of times. That was when Mark Sanford was governor. But then I've got him. I text him whenever I need something from him. So it's always good to have a congressman that call.
South Carolina, since I'm not there.
Well, Susan, thank you so much, and God bless for all you do.
Well, thanks, and the same to each of you, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Check out her website, which is undertheshield.com, and I'll put that phone number for the helpline up there on the show description a little bit later on. But until then, I say good night, God bless, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat station. And we're going to have, believe it or not, Dr. J.P. Sloan. He is going to be joining us on Tuesday, and we're going to have a blast on that one. So until then, I say good night and God bless.
If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan. Health care plan. Health care plan.
90 seconds. Seconds.
This is the most transparent administration.
10 seconds.
Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.